Tonight I want to thank the community for once again, fortunately once again coming out here to Bennett Park as we've done throughout the years. We've been here many times before to show our support for the families of those victims to hatred and to show solidarity to the rest of the city, the state, and the country at a moment, at a crossroad in our nation. As you know, this was a horrible weekend that saw the deaths of many in El Paso, Texas, and in Dayton, Ohio. We saw horrendous acts of violence. In El Paso, a white nationalist went out to slaughter now up to 22 Latino members of that community in an anti-xenophobic, anti-immigrant, violent way, shooting random innocent people. And we show solidarity to those from El Paso, Texas. I will be speaking to Congresswoman Veronica Escobar from that community later on this evening. She is someone that has been a strong supporter of immigrants and represents that district with distinction. And I will be speaking to her later on. I was on the phone earlier with her in a conference call where she conveyed to us and to all of you her thanks for the prayers, the best wishes that you have given to her community. And of course, the same kind of violence also hurt Dayton, Ohio, and a domestic terrorist, because that's what we should call them, a domestic terrorist assaulted and killed 9 people there, firing 41 rounds from a semi-automatic assault weapon in just 32 seconds, and killing 9 people and wounding others. So this is a horrible time in America, and we come here to pray and to give each other comfort. But whereas in the past we have limited ourselves to that, I think it is imperative now, and I find it compelling, that beyond the prayer, that we make a message, we send a message to the rest of America. And that is, first and foremost, that assault weapons should be banned from our country. Assault weapons should be banned immediately. There's no reason while children are walking around in a neighborhood or families are walking around unprepared for this kind of habit, that someone is walking around with an AK-47 or an AR-15 semi-automatic weapon, war weapons, in any community across the country. So the assault ban is important. The assault weapons ban is important, is imperative. The common denominator in all of these terrible, horrendous killings has been an assault weapon. In addition to that, there are 2 pieces of legislation, HRA and HR 1112, which propose to strengthen background checks on anybody that wants to get a gun in their hands. Strict background checks. And let me say, although these are horrendous acts because so many people were killed at one time, in urban settings across America, handguns are killing even more people. And so there is legislation for a 3-day cool-off period to check and see who wants to carry a handgun. So these pieces of legislation are imperative for us to move forward. Some of them have been passed already in the House of Representatives, and we wait on Mitch McConnell in the Senate to take them up immediately, as they should. And this legislation should not be tied to immigration reform or any other kind of issue on itself. On face value, they should be passed immediately. I heard today that the president say that maybe he wants to trade gun control for immigration reform. Horrendous. Absolutely not. And so we must go back to Washington now during our break and pass the legislation, the assault weapons ban that has not passed the House yet. And the Senate should come up immediately and pass the background check legislation that we passed earlier in the House this year. People will say this is not politics, this is not partisan, this is spiritual. Yes, it is. But after we pray and we go home, the slaughter continues. The slaughter continues as it did this weekend. The biggest massacre of Latinos in the history of our nation. We have targets in our back now. And we must begin by passing legislation that will help control the access of weapons to the general public. There are other issues of mental health service that are meritorious. There are other related issues that I think are meritorious as well. But the common denominator has been weapons in the wrong hands. And assault weapons shouldn't be in any hands whatsoever. Period. And so, I thank you all for coming out. Le doy las gracias a todos ustedes por salir esta noche. Nosotros hacemos un llamado, aparte del momento espiritual que estamos aquí, un llamado a que se aprueben las leyes de prohibir las armas de fuego automáticas en manos de civiles. También mejorar y fortalecer el sistema de chequeo de antecedentes de personas que quieren portar armas de fuego. Esos son dos proyectos que ya fueron aprobados en la Cámara de Representantes y le pedimos al Senado que actúe. Aparte de la oración, que es importante, aparte de la solidaridad, que es importante, nosotros también tenemos que ahora hablar en términos de lo que se tiene que hacer inmediatamente para resolver esta crisis sin precedentes en los Estados Unidos. Por eso le damos las gracias a todos ustedes por estar aquí. I thank you all for coming here, and we're going to listen now to my good friend, Council Member Mark Levine.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and we are lucky to have a fighter like you now in Washington, speaking up on behalf of our community. Yes, you can applaud for Congressman Espaillat. We need you now more than ever. I've lost track of how many times we've come together in this very spot as a community for these vigils. We came together after the massacre in Orlando, in Christchurch. We came once after a horrible, horrible massacre in Paris. We were here after the heartbreaking attack in Pittsburgh. And now, unfortunately, we are forced to add 2 more cities to the very, very long list of places where we've come together to mourn over: El Paso and Dayton. And we focus first and foremost on the victims in these gatherings, and the human stories are just absolutely heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. A young mother and father in the El Paso Walmart, 23, 24 years old, Jordan and Andre Anchondo. The mother died protecting her infant son. The son miraculously lived because of her heroism. In Dayton, it was 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds out having fun. There was one man who was 57. His name was Derek Fudge. He was there with his son and his soon-to-be daughter-in-law celebrating their upcoming marriage. And his life was snuffed out, together with the now more than 31. And as the Congress member said, these vigils are important and mourning is important, but we need to directly call out the madness which has led to this epidemic. This is the only country on earth where mass shootings have become a mass phenomena. There is nowhere else. There is nowhere else. And it is directly caused by the cowardice of people in the Senate and House of Representatives who are afraid to stand up to the NRA. Yes. Who are afraid to pass legislation which is sensible and smart and popular, because they don't want to stand up to the lobby and the NRA. It's absolutely reprehensible. This epidemic is a direct result of what is really the oldest evil in this country, which is white supremacy, which is resurging now and constitutes the single greatest terror threat to this country, bar none. And we need our federal law enforcement to treat it as such and to turn its attention to the homegrown terror threat which is taking lives from us all over the country. And yes, this epidemic has been directly caused by Donald Trump, who has used his words and policies as an accelerant on the fire of white supremacy. And these horrible, violent acts do not come as a surprise, I'm sorry to say. They have been predicted, because we saw what was coming in a climate created by this president in a country awash in guns. The last time we came together here was after the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand. And there's a prime minister there by the name of Jacinda Ardern. 6 days after that attack, New Zealand banned assault weapons. 6 days. That is leadership. What leadership do we have in this country, in the White House? Today, Trump got on TV, and here's what he did. He identified the enormous threat of video games. Yes, that was one of his talking points. He relied on that tired and hypocritical talking point that Republicans trot out after every shooting of calling for more mental health funding, something they have defunded for decades. And he actually had the nerve to call for unity. It would be laughable if it weren't so pathetic and appalling coming from him. So these vigils are important, but enough with the vigils. We need activism, we need action, we need to be protesting, we need to be organizing, we need to be supporting our leaders in Washington, we need to be replacing the sources of racism emanating from the White House and the Congress and everywhere in this country. Y yo quiero que mis hermanas y hermanos hispanos latinos de aquí, de Washington Heights, de todos los 5 condados y más allá, sepan, porque yo sé que estos son momentos difíciles para todo inmigrante en esta nación. Quiero que sepan que hay líderes aquí, todos el liderazgo de Nueva York, todos los oficiales de New York, se para firme con ustedes. Apoyamos aquí en Nueva York a los inmigrantes. Estamos totalmente opuestos y luchando en contra del racismo donde quiera que venga, y estaremos con ustedes luchando en contra de cualquier ataque de Washington y de otros líderes de este país. And I am so happy to be here in Washington Heights right now with a community that represents everyone who's been targeted recently. Latinos have been targeted, Jews have been targeted, Muslims have been targeted, African Americans have been targeted, LGBT people have been targeted. That is Washington Heights. That is Upper Manhattan. That is who we are, and we're going to come together and fight back as long as it takes to end this madness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. just a reminder also, we may think often that we are detached or far away from those incidents. But remember that last year, we had a white nationalist group march up here while we were being surveilled by ICE. We went on a vigil and we were being surveilled by ICE when we went to oppose the presence of a white nationalist group right up here on Fort Park. So don't think that you're ever detached or away from anything of that nature. It can happen to any one of us, any community. And words matter. You cannot go into a theater and yell fire. If little children and seniors are trampled and killed, then you're responsible if you yell fire. So the rhetoric and the vitriol coming from the White House is venting the flames of the very radical sectors of our country that will do what happened this weekend. With that, I want to welcome our Borough President, Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And I think that everybody understands that the most important aspect of this horrible situation is local input. And the fact that Congressman has brought us all together and that you're all here, we know that Agent Orange in the White House is the worst possible leader. But we can take the leadership to try to end this unbelievable mass killing. The numbers are astounding. I think you know that we're either at 251 or 255 mass killings. Either way, the numbers are astounding. And just in 2019, all by itself, 273 people have died and 1,067 have been injured, and those numbers may be low. We are dealing with guns tearing apart our communities. Every single day in America, 100 Americans are killed with guns and hundreds more are injured. That's an average of 36,383 Americans killed by a gun per year. Gun violence is the second leading cause of death for American children and teens. You know that. Thoughts and prayers, Agent Orange, are not a strategy. Thoughts and prayers will not stop the next shooter or the one after that or the one after that. The only thing is get rid of these goddamn guns. That is the only way we are going to stop this violence. I know how strongly we feel not only about the mass shootings, but the guns here in the state of New York and the city. And the numbers have gone down, but there's still 867 shooting victims in New York City in 2018, killed or wounded, not all killed. That's all with guns. And so we talk about the mass shootings, but we don't forget the individuals killed with guns. Either way, it's all about these guns. So I'm here to say, I can't believe we're here again. We're talking about another mass shooting. The Congressman has brought us together in the past. Washington Heights has brought us together in the past, and I thank you very, very much. But when will enough be enough? What does it have to happen for Congress to act on this and to do their job? Thank you, Democrats. What the hell are those Republicans doing? Thank you very much. I, too, have a nephew who was killed by a car in this instance. It doesn't matter. The issue is, can you imagine the unbelievable horror that the families in El Paso and Dayton and everyone else are feeling as we stand here today? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. Remember, H.R. 8, House Resolution 8, and H.R. 1112 are the two pieces of legislation that has been passed that dramatically strengthen background checks. And now let's hear from our good council member, Ydanis Rodríguez, who's here.
Thank you, Congressman. It is important to, one more time, bring the community together. And this is about redefining our nation. This is about making choices where are we going to be when someone writes the chapter of our generation. I'm going to be in the side of those people that try to define who are immigrants. Well, unless you are Native American, all of us are immigrants. Second, this is about changing the culture of hate. Why we are the nation that has the largest numbers of people in the prison system. It says a lot how much violence affects our life every day. So we have to continue working together. We need to be part of the history, being sure that we stand against anyone that stands with President Trump or anyone who supports the right wing in this country that wants to push our progressive agenda backward. Nosotros estamos aquí agradecidos de la iniciativa del Congresista Espaillat por traernos juntos en esta iniciativa. Es un momento de redefinir quiénes somos. Al menos que usted no sea un nativo indígena, usted es un inmigrante. Segundo, hay que acabar con la cultura de violencia. ¿Por qué somos el país que tenemos más presos en el mundo entero? Dice mucho de las cosas que nosotros tenemos que hacer. Let's continue working together as one team. Let's continue working together with Congressman Espaillat and everyone from Washington, D.C., from the city and the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And now let's hear from our Assemblywoman, Carmen de la Rosa.
Thank you, Congressman. I want to thank the Congressman for his leadership, because in the face of terror, he has stood up and once again brought our community together. Bennett Park is our hub, but it's now become a symbol of our community. Every single time, as Councilman Levine said, that something happens around the world, Washington Heights comes together right here to state clearly that we do not stand with hate, that we will not stand in silence and let hate penetrate our community. I think it was during the vigil for the Pulse nightclub when we came here, one of the first times that our community held a vigil, and I said at that vigil that we have to love each other and that we have to open up our hearts and that love has to penetrate. And that's all true. Love does have to penetrate, but I gotta tell you, I'm mad as hell. I'm mad as hell. We should all be mad as hell. Why? Because in that face of love, we still see the horrors that have happened around this nation. And the Congressman is right. We have to call out where the hate is emanating from. This isn't about mental health, although mental health and mental illness are a serious issue in our community and beyond. This is about hate for people who maybe we don't know, maybe we don't understand, maybe we perceive them to be different. There is a hate for immigrants, many of who have come to this country like I did, like my parents did, to build this nation. And when people say that immigrants are here and that there's an invasion, that is a trigger point for white nationalists who have no other way in white supremacists and people who are white supremacists who believe that because people come from another place, another island, another country that they do not know, we need to take them out. And that's what happened this weekend. When we wake up in the morning and the first news we hear is about the killing of innocent people who are simply going about their Saturday afternoon, their Saturday morning, it should shock us all to action. You know, when I read the story about the mother who shielded her infant, it really just made my knees weak. I'm a mother, and you know, I know what it's like to have that love for your child where you will do anything to protect them. But as Americans, we shouldn't be forced to make that choice. We should not be forced to make that choice. Our kids should be able to walk the streets. We should be able to worship in peace. We should be able to shop in peace. We should be able to go to family gatherings in peace and not fear that we will become the news of the next day. When I hear about the heroes of Dayton and of what happened this weekend in El Paso, I think about those heroes didn't want to be heroes. They wanted to be mothers, they wanted to be grandfathers, they wanted to be father-in-laws, they wanted to enjoy their family, they wanted to be here today. And instead, we're waiting on the silent heroes in government who refuse to stand up for our communities. We need heroes in the Senate, in the U.S. Senate. New York State has some of the strongest laws against guns, but we are not immune to the hate because on the federal level, we're still waiting for action. So I stand here with our congressman, and I know he's gonna go back to Washington and make sure to stand up for our community and say loud and clear that we need action. We should all be moved to action because we need to get them out of office if they will not stand up for our children and for our families. I pray for those lives that are lost. I pray for peace, not only in our communities, but in those communities shattered. You know, I had the the experience of hearing one of the fathers from the Sandy Hook massacres speak at a bill signing. And I've heard some of the Moms Demand Action advocates speaking in Albany. And the pain and the suffering that they have endured, the trauma that they have endured is palpable. You hear it in their voice. You see it in their faces. And that anguish doesn't leave when everybody else moves on. So we need to continue to demand action from our elected officials and send a clear message to the White House that not only will our communities not be divided, but we will stand up to the hate in the White House. We will make sure that they are voted out of office if they do not do their jobs and end automatic weapons, ban automatic weapons in the entire country. Estamos aquí porque primeramente dándole la gracia al congresista porque ha sido un campeón en uniendo nuestras comunidades en un tiempo de tragedia. Pero quiero destacar de que en cada historia de estas muertes que pasan a través de la nación, nosotros oímos de esos héroes que no quisieron ser héroes. Ellos no querían ser héroes. Ellos querían vivir su vida, estar con sus hijos. Esa madre que usó su cuerpo para que su hijo no lo mataran el sábado, no quería ser una héroe. Ella quería estar con su hijo. Y nosotros tenemos que asegurarnos que tengamos acción y tengamos héroes en el gobierno federal que puedan decir, ya basta. La ignorancia y la intolerancia a los inmigrantes en este país no nos vamos a quedar en silencio mientras este presidente sigue dándole odio a esas personas que tienen mente racista. Así que estamos aquí, vamos a mantenernos unidos, pero haciéndole un llamado al gobierno federal de que ya basta y que las leyes deben de cambiar. Gracias.
Now we're going to hear from the east side of Manhattan, Councilmember Ben Kalos.
Good evening, I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. I have the privilege of representing the east side all the way up to East Harlem, and I'm proud to join our Congressmember Adriano Espaillat here today. Now, this is a nation in mourning. This morning at services at my synagogue, we said our mourners Kaddish for our country, for the 30 people in 2 American cities who died in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, and we started our day with the prayers. But today is the 216th day of 2019, and over this tragic weekend, we saw mass shootings number 249 and 250. Prayer is not enough. Congressmember Adriano Espaillat and the rest of Congress have already passed universal background checks, and it's time for the Senate to pass it now. And it's time to have a president who will stand up to white nationalists, to terror, and who will sign those universal background checks. I just want to take one more moment to thank our Congressmember, because before he was in DC fighting for us, he was in Albany, and he, along with our Governor Cuomo, passed the toughest gun laws in the country, which is part of what has brought crime down in our city. But it's not enough, because the guns, and as we saw in Dayton and in some of these other cases, they're traveling across state lines, and none of us will be safe, none of our children, no one at any house of worship, no person at any nightclub, no person who's LGBT, none of us will be safe until we get these laws across this country and finally ban assault weapons. Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from our New York State Commissioner of Human Rights, Angela Fernandez.
Thank you. Thank you to the Congressman for his leadership. Now, I would like to note that there was once a assault weapons ban. Imagine that. So this is not something new that we are asking for. And I want to echo what Assemblywoman Carmen de la Rosa said. Bennett Park is a hub of peace and love. And let our love and peace emanate from here. The human rights law of New York State is the oldest anti-discriminatory law in the country. You might be thinking, why would I even be bringing that up now? Because that is actually the first step. The first step is that you have to fight for your right to live with dignity. You have to fight for your right to live in peace. You have to fight for your right to live without discrimination. Well, now we're just fighting for our lives. So let's continue to work together. Let's continue to meet the way that we're meeting. Let's continue to support all of our elected officials who are here united against this, because all of us are at risk. Yo solamente le quiero decir brevemente que la ley contra los armamentos de guerra antes existía. Esto no es algo difícil para nosotros. Y también le quiero decir que las leyes de derechos humanos del Estado de Nueva York es la ley antidiscriminatoria más vieja del país, 75 años. Y fue creado porque la gente estaba peleando por su derecho de vivir con dignidad, de vivir con respeto, de vivir sin ser discriminado y perder su alojamiento, perder su trabajo, perder crédito. Pero ahora estamos peleando para simplemente vivir en este país. Y esto es algo inaceptable. Por eso tenemos que seguir apoyando a todos los oficiales electos, todos los líderes comunitarios, para seguir trabajando juntos. Gracias.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Now we're going to hear from prayers from Rabbi Pupko. Rabbi, please come forward.
Thank you, Congressman Espaillat, who really has shown great leadership in bringing people together, being a force for good, and really going to Washington to change things. Thank you. I'm going to say a very short prayer. God Almighty, merciful God, help us pray for other things. We had enough praying. We had enough of thoughts and prayers after gunshots, after mass shootings. It's enough. We need to move on. God gave everyone free choice. Everyone can choose to be good or bad or evil or whatever they want, and we can't control that. What we can control is the laws. We need the guns out of people's hands. No more assault rifles, no more assault weapons, and let peace and healing come to this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now let's hear from Reverend Cabinte. Reverend Cabinte, still around, Reverend? Oh, here we go.
Ren Cabinte, Uptown Community Church. I want to say, first of all, that there are Christians in this neighborhood that are your friends. There are Christians in this neighborhood who stand against hate, that stand against violence, who want to get into deep relationships with those who suffer and who are victims in this neighborhood. One of the things that makes me very proud is that when we started as a church 11 years ago, we found friends here in this neighborhood who welcomed us. And if this Bennett Park is a place of peace and love, it extends farther than that, because in that building over there, which is Hebrew Tabernacle, a Jewish congregation, they have welcomed us for the last 5 or 6 years to worship there on Sundays. And that's a deep friendship. And so I'm here to say and represent the faith community to say that, number one, don't lose heart. You have friends. You have those in this community, in our congregation, who believe in a God who will break the teeth of those who do wicked and who comforts those who are victims. That his heart breaks for those who have died. He's lifting up those who survive. And simply to be here, very proud to say that we stand with you. We stand with this community. And in some measure, that gives me comfort today. And I pray that it will give you comfort as well. when it is time to protest and to act and to do acts of self-sacrifice every day to change the culture, we will be there with you as well. God bless you.
Thank you, Rep. Now we're going to hear from Rabbi Joseph Kalinsky from Yeshiva University. We were there after Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the elected officials that are here. Unfortunately, we have to come together for these times. I'd like to add just another angle to many of the things that have been said already tonight in terms of action. We've heard a lot tonight in terms of taking action with the legislature and to pound on doors to get things passed on all levels in our country. But perhaps now is also time to think about another way of action, of what we can all do in addition to speaking to all of our elected officials, of taking some action. The Jewish tradition teaches us that in order to break hate, we have to add more love. Loving each other, caring for each other, and being for each other. So I'd add for tonight to think for all of us here at this rally, think about how we can add more acts of kindness in our community on each of our personal levels, whether it means to help someone in the supermarket, whether it means to visit someone in your building who's living by themselves, whether it means to go visit someone in the hospital. Think about before you go to sleep, maybe at least for the next few nights, what did I do today to help my neighbors? What did I do to do a simple act of kindness that no one asked for? No one told me to do it. I'm just doing it because I want to bring more love into our community, and that spreads. And the only way to fight all the darkness is to bring more light into this world.
Thank you, Rabbi. And now we're going to hear from Reverend John Flack from our Savior Atonement. Reverend, thank you.
Thank you very much. I stand before you as a white, straight Christian guy, so I recognize that according to terrorism, we're actually the biggest threat to our community, and so I want to say I'm sorry. I also came to mind today a story that Jesus said to his disciples once when he was in a debate about who his neighbors were. And the man said, he said, well, there were two groups that hated each other, Samaritans and Judeans. And a Judean got beat up by some robbers and thrown to the side of the road. And a priest came by, and he saw the man bleeding in the ditch. And the priest said, I'm sending you thoughts and prayers. And he walked on. And then a lawyer came by, and he saw the man on the side of the road bleeding in the ditch. And he said, I'm sending you some thoughts and prayers. And he kept walking. And finally, the Samaritan came, and he saw the man in the ditch. And he said, oh, I'm supposed to hate you. And he thought about it. He's like, oh, he's hurt. He prayed about it, and God said, go help him. And so he said, thoughts and prayers are not enough. And he went down into the ditch, and he grabbed the man, and he put his bandages on his wounds and took him to an inn. And he said, I'm going to come back. And whatever he spends, I'm going to pay for when I get back. That's the kind of leadership we need. Where we say to people, if you're hurting, or if you're in pain, or if you're suffering, we're going to help. Thoughts and prayers mean, if you're really praying, you pray to God to ask you, how can I help my neighbor? Whoever that person is. It's my opinion that when someone tweets thoughts and prayers, what they're really saying is, I'm not praying and I'm not thinking. I'm just saying it so that people will vote for me. And it's time for us, as voters, to say to our elected officials and to say thank you for saying what you said today, but thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need laws. We need people to come out and say, we are going to look at our neighbors as neighbors, and we're going to protect them together. And we're going to hold our elected officials accountable, and we're going to say and one vote at a time, we're going to change this culture and make sure that this never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank the Catholic Charities and the Media High School for doing the outreach for us, and also Senator Robert Jackson could not be here today. He's in Albany, but who's here representing him? Joanna Garcia is here. Also, Al Taylor is out of town, but his staff is here. We have our district leaders, Manny de los Santos. We have, who else? And the Public Advocate's Office is here. I have a phone number for you to take down. This is an important one because I don't want you to just leave here feeling good and, we show some solidarity. This should turn to action. So I have Moscow Mitch's phone number, right? And I need you to call him and to tell him that we need HR 8 and HR 1112 passed immediately. His number is 202-224-2541. 202-224-2541. Now we're in recess right now, but that's his Washington number. I want you to call as many times as you can to push the Senate and us to go back to Washington and ensure that not only H.R. 8 is passed, H.R. 1112 is passed by the Senate, but we banned assault weapons in the House of Representatives as well. So take these numbers down. Thank you for being out here today. Keep the fight, keep the faith. This, in the future, we'll look back and we'll see this as a terrible time, but by sticking together, we were able to overcome this. Thank you for coming out. God bless you. Keep the faith.